Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jay Leibowitz, and on behalf of the Stillman School of Business at Seton Hall, I'd like to welcome you for our final talk in our Fall 2020 Distinguished Lecture Series in Business Analytics. At Seton Hall, we have some relatively new programs in analytics, including the MS in Business Analytics and the Masters in Data Science. So we really look forward to engaging you in your organization in our programs, our capstone projects, and other activities. In fact, on January 12th, we have an information webinar about our MS Business Analytics program, and you can check the Stillman School of Business Seton Hall website for registration and more information. Well, this evening, we're very pleased to have Maria Macuare, who's the Vice President of Data and Analytics at the Campbell Soup Company, as this evening's speaker. Coincidentally, we found out that Maria, my wife, and I all have the same birthday in November. So I knew we were, the stars were aligned for a great evening tonight. So to allow more time for Maria's presentation and Q&A to follow, so for Q&A, please enter any questions that you might have or comments in the Q&A window, and I'll moderate them at the end of Maria's presentation. So let me briefly introduce Ms. Macuare. Before serving as the VP of Data and Analytics at the Campbell Soup Company, Maria held senior leadership positions at Procter & Gamble as the North America Data Science Leader, the Latin America Business Intelligence Leader, and the Greater China Business Analytics Leader. So very accomplished. Her formal education is from Venezuela, and she has spent more than 17 years in the analytics field. She is also an obsessive travel planner and crafter. So Maria's personal presentation this evening is called An Unconventional Path to Data Science. So I'd like to welcome Maria. Thanks for joining us. It's all yours.
Thank you so much, Jay. I'm hoping that you guys can see my slides. So it's going to be a mix of personal factoids plus professional growth. So please bear with me. It's a bit of a personal story. I always like to start with a picture. Let me just see. Okay, with this picture, right? I was showing it to some colleagues of mine, and they were telling me that it looks like I was about to go milk a cow. Like it was very. I lived in a very small town in Venezuela. That's where I was born and I grew up. Hence the thick accent. I apologize if it's hard to follow. This was a little child of 3 years old, and if I look back in time and try to explain to her everything that has come through in the last 44 years, well, she wouldn't believe it. This is a bit about my hometown. It is in a very warm area of Venezuela. It's again small. I have lived, to Jay's point, on lived and worked in 6 different countries. I'm 44 years old, and I have 2 children. I always like presenting my family. That also keeps me grounded and gives a lot of meaning to everything that has gone through my life. So this is Marcelo, my husband, Marco and Mia. Marco is 11 and Mia is 8, and they're currently studying from home. So this is when it starts to get interesting, right? It's an unconventional path because again, is my own very personal version on how I landed in the data science field, which is my true passion, and I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. I'm a civil engineer. I went to school in Caracas. I had to move from my small town to the capital of Venezuela, where the reputable universities at the time were giving engineering degrees. I had 3 choices. I came from a household of parents that were the first graduates in their entire families. So my only 3 choices were being a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. And since I had a love for math and logic, I went for engineering, and among the different engineering courses, my dad told me to become a civil engineer, and then I said, sure, that's what I'm going to be. So after I graduated, I joined Procter & Gamble in Caracas. The Latin American headquarters for P&G used to be in Caracas, Venezuela. So I started my career there in IT, of all places. So I was in information technology, regardless of the fact that I was a civil engineer. I did a bunch of different IT assignments there, and these bubbles with the person that is being picked are promotions. So when I was promoted from one level to the other, I have them there because they're so rare that I found them very, very meaningful and such a joy every time that I could get one. It starts to get really interesting when a friend of mine dared me to apply for a job posting in Japan, which almost as a joke, they were describing what they needed and I kind of had it. And then they called me for an interview and I did well. And they called me for the second interview, the third interview, and they offered me the job. I decided to move to Japan without having ever been in Asia, never been on a transatlantic flight anywhere. I grabbed my bags and I just moved there. To this day, I tell my mom that I had no idea how she let me go, and she said that she couldn't stop me. She couldn't stop me for achieving those dreams. So I went there and I joined the R&D statistics department. Again, not really knowing much what I was getting into, and I'll go more into the details on how that truly started my data and analytics journey. I moved from R&D, which was a very scientific community, to the business community and became the Northeast Asia business analytics leader. I was the only one, and then I recruited another person. We were a small group of 3 people. Northeast Asia was Japan and Korea, which were very sophisticated markets. I'm going to talk about that more in a second. Then in 2009, I had a new teeny tiny small apartment. I was pregnant with Marco. And my boss called me and said, Maria, I have a fantastic opportunity. We want you to move to China. And then I thought about it for 2 seconds and I said, yes. And we packed our bags, my newborn baby, and we moved to China. And over there, I became the Greater China Business Analytics leader. That was a bigger role. I had responsibilities for Taiwan, Hong Kong, and the China business and Macau, which was a monumental business, really, really massive and important for P&G at the time. I believe it still is. Then in 2012, I was getting used to the idea of enjoying China. It takes a while to get used to live in such a different place. My boss called me again and he said, Maria, I have a fantastic opportunity. We want you to move to Panama. You are going to be the BI leader for Panama, business intelligence leader for Latin America. So that was everything from Argentina all the way to Mexico. So all the Latin American countries I had to lead their business analytics program. And I packed my bags, we moved there. When he called me, I was pregnant with Mia. So again, moved my 3-year-old and my newborn baby. And we stayed there for about 4 years until I got another phone call. And all of these phone calls were from the same guy. So that person was my boss throughout or my one-up, or we were always working together. So he calls me on 2015 and gave me what I believe was the opportunity of my life. He told me, Maria, we're starting breaking ground in Procter & Gamble. We're going to start a data science department. And we need somebody who understands our most challenging markets, who have a ton of commercial experience, who can lead that program for us. And while I had depth in statistics and tools and methods, my real edge is on applying those to real business problems and translating those solutions or those statistical outcomes into actual solutions and actions to take to solve for those business problems. So I moved there. We created the team. Fantastic experience. And then that was it. So after moving to all these medium places, I finally made it. I got to Cincinnati. That was where all the P&G huge headquarters are. So I was really thinking, really, I'm done. Like I moved to all these places. I'm gonna stay in Cincinnati, Ohio for the rest of my life. Then something came up. The chief technology officer at the time for P&G left P&G and joined Campbell Soup as the CIO. And then he called me and said, Maria, I have a fantastic opportunity. And then I thought about it for 2 minutes and then I said yes. And I started serving at Campbell Soup more than 2 years ago in February 2018. And I lead the overall data and analytics program, which is, again, a dream assignment where I could call the shots and get things done and capitalize on all this experience that I had across so many years, across so many markets, and get something started for a new company. That's pretty much the story. I have captured what all these different assignments meant for me personally and professionally, and that's what I'm planning to share in the coming slides. So Venezuela, how that helped me? Venezuela is a developing country, so in my culture, the only way to get ahead is just take your education seriously. As I said, my mom and my dad were first university graduates. I had no choice, but we had to get it to be excellent at what we studied. We had to get straight A's. I mean, there was a lot of pressure to exceed from an educational point of view. So that shaped my mentality and my approach to things. Also, being a developing country, no job is too small. We don't have, at that point, Venezuela didn't have that level of specialization or specificity. I wasn't like, okay, I'm a civil engineer, so I can only work in construction or architecture. I can work on whatever. Pay me and I will get it done. So that has also shaped my culture in even in the data and analytics field. If somebody asks me for a table, I produce a table. If they want an advanced stochastic model, then they're going to get it done. So there's no job too small, and I live by that creed to this day. And I also started learning a little bit of the basics. So I took a couple of courses and we were applying contour charts and theory from supply chain into the business world and trying to understand what's driving outliers in sales or share performance, etc. So I started to fall in love with statistics in my Venezuela assignment. The one thing that I struggled with is the fact that I was a little girl still from a small town. So I was terrified that people will find out that I was an imposter. So imposter syndrome is a real thing. And I hesitate to ask questions. People told me things that I understood half of what they say, and I run with it without actually knowing exactly what was asked from me. So that's something that was a handicap that I had to overcome with the years. And honestly, I still struggle a little bit with finding my voice and this imposter syndrome. Then I moved to Japan. So in Japan, I learned a couple of things. Again, a lot professional, a lot personal. The one thing that I learned about the Japanese is that the loudest voice isn't necessarily the smartest. The analogy that I draw from this is if you are in Venezuela in a meeting and you ask people about their opinion, everybody's going to raise their hand and everybody is going to be a lot of opinions and a lot of conversation. And then you meet again in a week and not a lot will get done. Huge talkers, not necessarily very diligent about doing. And again, I'm stereotyping, that's awful, but that's a little bit of the flavor that I wanted to give you guys on the contrast here. In Japan, you ask about their opinion, and people are very careful. They value silence. The week after, everything is done to perfection, flawlessly. So I learned that while people don't necessarily speak out in meetings or use their voice actively in that presence, they're really diligent about their work and they take their work really seriously. So I met the smartest people in Japan and I learned how to navigate through that. I was blessed to report to somebody who was a PhD in statistics from Beijing University. He was a Chinese national who was living in Japan. And this guy spent hours teaching me how to do structural equation modeling, how to use SPSS, SAS, JUMP. I learned the basics for statistics and the basics for the tools at the time. At that point, I didn't even hear about open source. R was starting to be a thing in CPG in my industry, but it really wasn't very utilized. So I learned how to use those traditional packages then. And Japan being Japan, they have flawless, perfect, amazing data. So the problems I was working on is what I call first world problems. So they were trying to estimate the impact of the weather in summer season for women to start using very thin feminine pads, or why people switch from powder detergent to liquid detergent during the winter because it dissolves better on cold water, and all kinds of what's the ideal pricing, what's the inflection point for distribution, like really, really cool problems. So it helped me to ground a lot of experience using statistics. So I moved to China, and I really, really loved that experience, because the Chinese, the same way I am, are from, and again, I'm stereotyping, I apologize, are from a developing country. So they're really competitive, and everybody worked really, really hard. And they know that advancement was in studying hard, work hard, and they're going to see the results, which they clearly did. So I had a team that was highly, highly competitive, and it was an amazing site, very quant. Math just runs really, really quickly. And in China, I worked on developing world problems, which are not analytical problems, but they're data problems. So how we had to stitch together the different pieces of the puzzle, we could see what goes from our distribution centers to the stores, but then we couldn't see what went to wholesalers or what went to clubs, or we could see consumption in certain areas of China, but not all of them. So we had to stitch all this massive puzzle together in order to get a relatively decent view on what the business will look like. I also learned a lot of visualization techniques while I was in China, because it was all about visibility. So we were using Spotfire at the time. I think P&G still does. I don't think they have transitioned to Tableau or Power BI or anything else. China, again, was fascinating as well, because it's an investment choice for many companies. So there was money for projects. There was a lot of experimentation, a lot of appetite to try new things. So that's something that also helped me to grow professionally. And we also did a lot of projects with academia, amazing universities, highly, highly respected, and an amazing analytics program. So we did a lot of collaboration with the Chinese universities, which was fascinating. Then I moved to Panama. Frankly speaking, Panama was the hardest of all my assignments for a variety of reasons. One of them, Latin America was not an investment choice for P&G, so I had to do more with less. So I learned how to work with little resources and get things done, and whatever global wanted us to do didn't necessarily apply to Latin America. So I moved from an investment center to a savings center, and that completely changes your approach to things, right? You become more scrappy. You have to resort to open source. Your people need to learn how to code, because you're kind of outsource a lot of the work. So again, all these opportunities were truly opportunities for me to grow professionally. The other thing that was really hard about going back to Latin America is, and I don't know if you ever read or heard about this, but going back home is harder than leaving it. When I moved to Japan or China, I knew I was moving to a different planet. So I had expectations that it was going to be hard, that it was going to be, adjustment was going to be difficult, learning the language was going to be a nightmare. Going back to my country, Panama isn't my country, but still Spanish speaking, weather is almost the same, and there's a huge immigration of Venezuelans to Panama. So I was kind of going back to my country. You had the expectation that it was going to be super easy, and it wasn't. I was a changed person. I had different expectations from work. I didn't appreciate the loudest voice at the table. I knew that the loudest voice wasn't the smartest. And then it was really, really challenging. I had to readjust my expectations. The other problem is that I was an outsider. I was sent back to Latin America to lead a program when I didn't spend my professional years in Latin America. So I had to approach everything from a concept that was given by me by one of my mentors, the concept of humble confidence. So how you approach your team, your management from a true professional thought leadership, while keeping your humility and understanding that there's people who wanted the same posting, who thinks that you don't understand the market well, etc. So that again, that concept of humble confidence has been with me as well throughout my career. And at the end, we spend a lot of time teaching. I spend a lot of time teaching and learning. So we apply this concept of each one teach one. So I lived in these places again with amazing data, working for amazing analytics problems. I live in these places with awful data. So we were solving for data problems. So how can I use that experience and give something back to the Latin American business? And again, teaching them as much as I could and learning as much as I could from a market that I didn't live at for many, many years. So humble confidence, learn as much as I could and teach as much as I could. That was Panama. It was really hard. Then my latest experience was with P&G, moving there to lead their data science team, and then I'm going to speak a little bit about my most recent posting. Moving to the US was hard too, because in the case of Procter & Gamble, Cincinnati is the center of everything, right? So I had to change my pace. So moving from a market where everything is really quick, where everything is sales oriented, is serving the store and looking at the shelves, to this huge, massive, monumental machine that is managing this amount of business and these many resources and how many marketing people and finance people and consumer research people. So it was a bit hard to navigate because it was, as I said, the center where everything starts. I had an appreciation for what global means versus local. So why I always thought that global people were crazy and nothing that they designed was really helpful for the market. So I started to have an appreciation. I was one of them, creating central solutions, trying to make it work at the markets and realizing, well, that's never going to work in Venezuela or Peru or China or whatever. So having that appreciation for those two different roles when you're in the business world. I had to navigate also the hype of data science, which is a humbling concept, right? When I talk to any manager in marketing, a general manager, a president in the companies or the different divisions that I work with, they're expecting talking robots. Alexa was my share. Self-driving cars in the supermarkets. Like they have this very futuristic version on what data science can solve for. And that's all fine and good. And there's things that are really flashy, and at the same time, they're really business accretive. The problems that we were solving for weren't that fancy. There's a lot of work that can be solved for in supply chain that is literally printing money for those companies, and they're not necessarily flashy, or they're not necessarily going to make it to the Wall Street Journal as a fantastic example of data science, because it doesn't do natural language processing, it's not doing video recognition, it's not self-driving cars. So helping my management to navigate that difference between applying data science to solve for a problem that is going to give us money back versus having something that you can post in Harvard Business Review or the Wall Street Journal as an amazing data science example. While I was working there, and I think I have a little bit of time for a little anecdote. I was working on a project to customize the store's offering, even on the neighborhood that was surrounded those stores. So we worked for Walmart or Costco or Publix, whatever chain, and we told them, okay, this is the ideal assortment based on the people that lives around you. And as part of that program, we were involved on the Gillette Welcome to Manhood program, I think. So it was like every male in the US nation will get a free shaving device to celebrate their manhood. And somebody made a mistake and sent one of these free gifts to a lady. And she posted that in Instagram or whatever, and it became viral, and it made it to the Wall Street Journal. And it said like, "Thank you, Gillette, but no thank you." And it was a joke about how these things can go really, really bad, and something that you're intending is free. You are intending it for a very good purpose to generate loyalty among this the male population. It can become a gag or a joke in such a prestigious publication, right? So again, is also humbling how these things can go really, really bad and can even damage the reputation of a company. So again, I think it's a fascinating world. Also, I had to learn more about corporate politics. That's something that I was shielded from when I was in the smaller markets. It was more, again, more operational at a different pace. Learning to navigate in these headquarters situations, who is who and who influences your career, what are the different things that are at play, what matters to everyone, is something that I wasn't necessarily really good at, and I had to quickly learn that while working in P&G. And then more first world problems, fancy problems, fascinating. The data is amazing, at least compared to China and Latin America. So a lot of experience using advanced type of work to solve for business problems. So that's a little bit of the P&G experience. Currently at Campbell, I lead. So if you think about it, my roles have been mostly client facing. So I worked in the business analytics embedded teams working for a given brand or a category or a division or a country, helping executives to make decisions better, faster, more repeatedly. At Campbell Soup, I own everything. I own from data ingestion to the delivery of analytics, which is, again, imposter syndrome came all over back again, because while I have a strong commercial experience and I can talk to any leader inside out and sell analytics really, really easily, the tech part of it is really, really daunting and complicated, and I had to manage that. I'm going to speak about that more in a second. So I have a few fun pictures here. This is me in, like, 1 week in China. You walk around and these young ladies were dressed as a costume. They were dressed as geishas, and I took a picture with them. This is 2 days in China when Marco was a baby, and these were members of my team. I'm still in touch with them. And this is like 3 days in Panama. All of them are from Venezuela, and I run a 5K. I think I run. There's a lot of running in Panama. I run 35K. I was always the last one, literally the ambulance and me running. I was the last person always, but I really, really enjoy. I'm awful at it, but I like running. So yeah, this is all entertaining, but I'm sure you are asking, okay, today, what is it that I really, really do? And I have a little bit of a slide here. So I take care of the BI platform. So everything that implies what we call industrialized data ingestion to delivery of these reports and insights through self-serve technology. We have a combination. I mean, I don't know how much of the details you guys need, but we serve this information through MicroStrategy, Power BI, Tableau, etc. I also have a service called the Reporting Factory. This was a necessity at Campbell because since we didn't have a very sophisticated data analytics group, reporting was done erratically across many different functions, and we had people who was coded to do something and they ended up doing reporting. So I created this service where we can take reporting off the hands of our knowledge workers and have that produced and automated by professionals, and we can free their time so they can go sail or fix the supply chain or do what they really were meant to do. The third team that I created was a business analytics team, resorting to my experience in Japan and China, which is embedded business analytics professionals that work with our company executives to provide answers to their key business questions. And the last one is a data science team, and they're working on advanced big data problems, basically. And later on, I can give you a couple of examples on what that is. So we go from the most basic technology enablement all the way down to the most advanced examples of using analytics to solve for business problems. And then all of this is rooted into having the right tools in place, having the embedded into the right business processes, and how we're enabling people through data literacy. So this is a whole program that is hard to move, is very again monumental task, but I think we're leaping into the right direction at Campbell. The other question that I get constantly asked, and I anticipate I just have an answer here, what's the biggest problem to move the needle in analytics? And if you Google it, you're probably going to find the answer, and the answer is real, is culture. So how do you can have fantastic analysts, the best technology, fantastic data. If people do not want to listen, they won't. So how do we elevate their appetite? How do we elevate their literacy? How do we have our business partners asking the right questions versus asking for a data piece or give me that report? Or so is again, this is one of those non-tangible interventions that really we need to go after if we want to institutionalize professional analytics program in any company, at least in my experience. And the last question, and I don't know if you guys caught that in along the presentation, I've been IT coded my entire career, so I belong to the information technology function. And in my very early years, I always wondered why in IT? I should go work for finance or marketing or one of the core, at least in CPG, in my industry, in fast moving consumer goods products. IT is not necessarily at the core of where the action is happening. So what's the point, right? And later on, with maturity and seeing how the whole data science situation has unfolded, I get it. There's three things why it is important, why an IT professional is positioned perfectly to be excellent delivering business analytics. One of them is because computer science is a must. If you want to solve for small problems and you're good at SPSS, JOM, Python, R, you name it, you can probably get to an answer once. But if you don't understand databases, data engineering, and how to industrialize those answers that you're producing, the impact that you're going to have is very small. So I think this computer science is a crucial skill within this world, as much as math and stats and having a deep understanding of math and understanding the business. So I always show this to my business partners and I tell them, yeah, this is IT, but we don't work in isolation. We are counting on your business team, so we don't come with a solution that has no applicability in the real world. And lastly, I don't have an agenda. I want my company to do really well, but I'm not in love with marketing campaign A. If you have marketing who's worked for 2 years, shaping, massaging, ideating a campaign, at the end of the campaign, it's going to be hard for them to be objective. I don't care. I want the company to do well so I can tell them, as is, this campaign sucked and we wasted money. And I have no vested interest on telling them anything else than the truth. So that's my third answer right there. Why in IT? And that's all I have. I think I did good on time, right, Jay? So I'm done. Go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Maria. What a journey and you've had on your auspicious leadership throughout the world. So we really appreciate your sharing your views on that. We had quite a few questions that have come in, and as I guess the chair for this, I'm going to reserve maybe 2 or 3 questions from me at the end. So if that's okay, I'm going to start off with a number of questions that came in during your talk. And one of the questions looked at, with your vast experience throughout the world, what has been the toughest part of your job and how has it differed in the many countries you've worked in?
So I think it has to do with the concept of humble confidence and the imposter syndrome. The toughest thing for me is to move quickly because I don't provide an answer or an insight unless I'm 100% sure. I'll give you one example. Today in the morning, we have our earnings release call. Campbell did. So our CEO and the CFO went online and they talked to Wall Street about our results. And last night I was working on a couple of slides, and I have difficulty letting go those slides unless imagine the weight, right, of having the CEO face Wall Street, unless they're perfect. So finding that balance, the 80 for the 20. So when you allow for rounding error, approximation, directionally, this is what the data says versus perfection is being really, really hard. And throughout my career, it depends on the country you're working on. The Japanese are perfectionists. It has to be perfect. And that probably exacerbated my that instinct that I have. While developing countries are more, give me whatever you have, I don't care, and then I will move on. And if it is wrong, at least we had something to go off. So balancing the 80 for the 20 is probably one of the hardest things in this career for me personally.
Very interesting. And I'm sure even though there are women in data science chapters, I know at Stanford, I think first started the Women in Data Science conferences. But I'd be interested in your perspectives, even looking across the different countries and regions you've worked in. What advice do you have for women who want to pursue the data science profession or business analytics profession? What have been some of your experiences, good or bad?
Yeah, I make a point, Jay, when you invited me to do this, I had to say yes, because whoever is watching, they need to see that somebody like me, who is a foreigner of color, coming from a third world country, made it, then the sky's the limit for everybody else, right? So I firstly, I make a point just to show my face, and to the women and the men out there, whatever you think is a limiting factor is not. I mean, again, look at me. um the Throughout my career, I always struggle with the fact that I'm mostly the only women at the table, frankly speaking. I think that there's is less scary than what it feels, and there's a lot of that intersection. At least again, in my world, if you work in a digitally native or a pure IT shop, might be different. But in my world, the intersection of IT, the intersection of business analytics and business is the perfect place for a woman. Perfect. And I'm going to tell you why. Is this humble confidence aspect. You are taking concepts that are extremely complex and you simplify them and you tell your business leaders in a way that they feel smart. We have a talent for making people feel smart. I will explain something to my president and something lights up and he gets it, because we have that finesse. We have that way of approaching problems. Perfect work for a female leader. And again, you can. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm happy to mentor, coach, whatever you guys need. It is a fascinating career, very glamorous. I have access to leaders who I would never dream of. I think I had an MBA based on all the discussions that I sat on. Very, very blessed. And again, fascinating intersection of business, commercial functions, and analytics. Long answer, but I have a lot of passion for this topic.
That's wonderful. And we have always at Seton Hall encouraged diversity and inclusion, and we also feel that there are great opportunities in the data science, business analytics, areas for those who um, have the interest and the passion as you do, to move forward. Okay, so let me kind of segue a little bit. There are a number of questions that deal specifically with your industry, and then there will be some other questions that will be a little more general. Okay, so James had asked about what are some sources that you've used to better understand the customer purchase behavior at retail throughout your career with CPG companies?
Oh, that's an amazing question that I have a lot of passion for too. So traditionally, in my industry, companies resort to something called panel, which is a proxy of what's happening really, really in the universe. And traditionally, I'm talking 40, 50 years ago, and that those things still exist to this day. This is not Campbell's opinion. This is my opinion. I have to clarify that. So they take 200,000 households and they have these people scan everything that they consume at the house. And that's how we understand their loyalty, their share of wallet, their behaviors, try to understand their behaviors, etc. So clearly, this is a micro representation of the world, right? Today, with the advances of technology, and I know that sounds very cliche, we can learn so much more. Imagine how much data is collected through loyalty cards. Like if you are a Kroger shopper in the Midwest, everything goes through that card, and we know exactly. And we don't care about your personal information, but we care where you live, how many children are in your household, more or less what's your level of income, and what is it that you buy. So we can customize our offer to your needs. I mean, the digital world has really, really enabled so many avenues for data collection that is completely making this panel proxy of reality completely outdated, in my point of view. And this is only growing, and offerings there are just going significantly higher. I also don't have a lot of appreciation for surveys on practice and habits, like what is it that you like and tell me how you feel. Today, we don't need to ask people the house. We can see behavior, and actually, instead of going after claim behavior, we go after actual behavior that, again, is collected in 300 million different ways. We just need to pick one and start reading from there. Again, that's my opinion. I know there's people who love surveys and feel that household panel is the best thing in the world. That's not my opinion.
Thank you. Yeah, we also know with Campbell Soup in particular that you've been very advanced looking at the digital transformation of the company. And I think your CIO, so Francisco Fraga, has been pushing the digital transformation concept. I remember even in the early 90s, Campbell Soup was one of the first companies to implement a commercial expert system. It was called Cooker, and it captured the experience and the rules of thumb of one of your experts dealing with a particular pressure cooker. Um, and so I know you've been very active in the AI, artificial intelligence space over the years. So I know you've talked a little about data analytics. Can you talk about maybe where you see the role of artificial intelligence heading, strategically in the next few years at Campbell Soup?
Sure. So I mean, I can give you a couple of examples. I cannot go really, really deep, but there's areas around product formulation, for example. We can dramatically simplify our recipes because we truly just produce foods, right? And what's the basis for these recipes and how we simplify that process so we can optimize how we procure ingredients and the steps. You go do step one for 10 different recipes, and then you disaggregate step two for this group of recipes and this group of recipes. Today, we might be doing all of these in separation, and there's massive savings that we're investigating there. There's also AI applied to the way we procure vegetables. So we have a pool of growers for tomatoes or carrots, potatoes, which I find fascinating because I work for soap for so many years that talking about the price of tomatoes I find really really funny. But how we optimize, we work on a lot of optimization problems where we use machine learning AI techniques to find what's the ideal combination of growers and the yield and the distance from our factories and minimize cost and waste there. The same thing with stale products. So our Pepperidge Farm division produces products that go bad quickly, right? I mean, they have an expiration date. So how we optimize our supply chain in a way that we can minimize stale product and reduce waste. I mean, the sky is the limit. And again, none of these are Alexa, tell me what's my next product innovation. These are real problems, and they yield a lot of value for the company.
That's great, and I'm sure you always kind of trace it back to your KPIs and key performance indicators and making sure they provide the most strategic value to the company. Okay, so let me step back a little more generally. There are a number of questions that came out of your discussion about kind of the education side of this field. So one of the questions looked at, based on your experience, Maria, what are the most important tools to learn in business analytics?
It depends. If you're in a client facing role, you need to get stuff done. I would say 5 webinars. They're free. The amount of libraries and
Maria, you're breaking up a little bit.
oh,
See
am
if you
I?
can. Yeah, there you go.
Move things around. Is this better?
Yes.
I will say open source. If you want to get resource done quickly, open source. But then having and Python and R and becoming familiar with the right libraries and learning statistics so you don't do anything crazy and that makes no sense. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. As you guys know well, data prep is 80% of the problem, right? So there's also a bunch of packages out there that are superior doing ETL, like facilitating ETL, the extract, transform, load of data assets. There's Alltrix, Nime that is also free and open source. And then as you move back in the stack, I'm sorry, there's also visualization tools. I know that Tableau is doing a lot of investment with academia, giving them licenses. Power BI is a strong contender now, and is more cost effective than Tableau. So I would say visualization tools, statistical packages. I will focus on open source. ETL tools that will help with data prep, which could be a nightmare, it could be the push of a button if you know what you're doing. And then going behind closed doors and understanding how databases work, how data engineering work, and what the industrial BI world looks like. It's also a field of analytics that is extremely important. To be frank, when I read the tea leaves for the industry, we're going to be short of data engineers. We're not going to be short of data scientists. We're all struggling to find strong data engineers. So I have a candle lit to all the saints. So my son and my daughter choose that field versus something else. I'm trying to influence them so they become data engineers. It's a long answer, but it depends.
And I'm sure you agree that, you know, the tools, I'm sure you agree that the tools and the technologies, you know, change over the years. So just having this skill to learn how to learn, right, is really a fundamental skill set to have as people pursue their careers.
I agree partially, to be completely transparent, and that's a struggle that I have sometimes with academia because people try to be tool agnostic, but when they go to the workforce, they need to know one. I mean, they need to. So if you learn one, it's a breeze to learn the other ones, right? So I would rather spend time learning one versus trying to learn generic coding techniques. Learn something that is going to be useful and that you can resort to as soon as you hit the workforce. That's my advice, at least.
Excellent. And I know at Seton Hall, we introduce our students to a variety of not only open source and commercial tools, but the key ones that are being used in industry. Well, let me also kind of talk about your background and as a civil engineer, and then you moved into data science. And one of the questions that came up mentioned about your interest in statistics from the beginning, and they want to know what exactly appealed to you.
Oh, I'm gonna tell you. So it's funny. So the first concept that I learned was about the normal distribution and the three standard deviations and what is an outlier and all of that. And in CPG, again, in my industry, we're obsessed with reads of what happened last week, what happened last month, and why are we growing 0.001%, right? So we used control charts, I mean, the normal distribution effectively, and we called it, I apologize, we called it the BS filter because we knew what was real versus what wasn't. So when somebody will say, why the share grew 0.1%, we say, well, because it changes every week, and this is how your pattern looks like, and that means nothing. So it's like putting glasses on. It's like you're in a blur of data, and that just makes it so clear. And I found those very, very simple starts in my career so telling, and it gives you such power, and it really enables leadership to focus on what matters rather than what doesn't. So that was what fascinated me at the beginning.
Well, I just spent most of yesterday grading business statistics final exams, so I can relate to what you're saying. One other semi-technical question, and then I'll ask one or two of my own, and then we'll close this out for this evening. And you hinted at this, but how do you decide between third-party paid solutions or tools versus open source tools? What would you advise?
Okay, so we're talking about tooling versus. I thought you were going somewhere else. So in both companies, depending on the problem that you're trying to solve for. So if you are trying to solve for a regulatory problem, something that you can defend in court, you maybe want to go with a commercial tool, because if something breaks, you have a throat to shock, basically. But when you're trying to be scrappy and identify again, what is there a sales pattern that is not working, and you want to advise our sales force that there's something strange happening at customer X, for example. That's not is when you are creating intelligent business alerts. It's a classical example. Go for open source. So I think it's a more cost effective. It's moving quicker, frankly. The amount of information out there and people who are invested into creating algorithms and solving for problems is fascinating. So in my case, it's mostly about accountability and the seriousness of the problem and that you're trying to solve for. If it is something again regulatory or that you have to defend, that has court implications. If you want to protect the data, we're very judicious about protecting our consumers, customers, and employees' data. So we don't gamble with that, right? So we go after commercial solutions rather than open source. So that's more or less the case. And it's the same. Where I thought you were going, it's the same with partners. So how much of the work we do internally and we code it ourselves versus we buy off-the-shelf solutions. We buy off the shelf when the IP is there, and it makes no sense for us to produce it ourselves. we do that a lot too.
Very good. I'm just checking other questions. I think we hit most of them, so maybe I'll use the prerogative as the organizer to just ask two final questions for you, Maria. The first might be a little tougher, and the second one, I think you'll probably know right off the bat. But in your position as VP of Data and Analytics at Campbell Soup, many of us might aspire in the analytics field to be in that type of position. What are the kinds of things that keep you up at night?
Making mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Last night I didn't sleep well because again the earnings call was coming up this morning, and I was terrified that my numbers were not. So making mistakes keeps me awake at night. Not moving to maturity quickly. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the 100 different analytics maturity model for different enterprises. So how this is a journey that I embarked on 2 years ago, and we are progressing, but sometimes it frustrates me that we're not progressing as fast as I want. That we don't have every dashboard tied up and executives just turn on the computer and everything is served to them exactly as they need it, with the hierarchies they want and at the speed they need. So not moving quickly enough worries me. And recently COVID, right? So how do we serve our customers and consumers in these unprecedented times, and the idea of putting food at their tables, it inspires me. So how we make sure that, given again unprecedented level of demand, we put food at our consumers' table when they need it, how they need it, in the places where they shop.
Very good.
That wasn't hard, Dave.
Well, here's probably, in the interest of time, the last question, and we have a little side bet going in our family. So what is the best seller? Either the Campbell's tomato soup or the chicken noodle soup?
Chicken noodle.
You're kidding.
I don't actually, honestly, I don't know. I think depends on the season, actually.
Well, I lost the bet. I thought for sure you would say tomato, and that was the majority of the votes in my family. So not that chicken noodle soup isn't good at all, but I know we grew up on Campbell's tomato soup. So
I will confirm that for you.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Well, we just have a minute or two left, and it looks like there might have been one or two more open questions. Would it be okay if people actually followed up with you with any additional thoughts or comments?
Sure, befriend me. I'm very friendly in LinkedIn, so absolutely.
Wonderful. And Maria, we want to thank you again for being the anchor woman to close out our Fall Distinguished Lecture Series in the analytics area. And you did a terrific job. And we look forward to continuing our conversation in terms of synergies between your work and Campbell Soup and in our university. Yeah. So again, thank you. Want to wish you all a healthy, happy holiday season. And I want to thank everyone for joining us. I want to give a special shout out to Burke, who's running the IT behind the scenes, and to Pam, who helped with the marketing throughout the whole semester. So thank you, everyone, and wishing you all a healthy, happy holiday season. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Maria. Bye-bye.